you are black, if you are brown, if you are indigenous, and if you are poor, this system is rigged and it is rotten to the core, and we gonna unbreak it. That's it. And that's all.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Radical Democracy Show. I'm your host, Kamali Rose, here with Kwame Norville. You are familiar with him if you watch this show enough. Kwame joins us from Raise Fist Media, and we are here today to talk about, welcome to the show, Kwame, as always. Glad to have you on. Appreciate you being here, brother. Kwame and I are here to talk to you today about this recent clip that's been floating around. It's Jamaal Bowman and Cori Bush on CNN, and they're being interviewed by Dana Bash on CNN. And so let's take a look at this clip. Essentially, they're talking about, she's going to be asking about, these are two, for those not familiar, with Cori Bush and Jamaal Bowman. They are congresspersons elect. They were recently elected in the last election to Congress, and they will be joining, inaugurated on January 20th. They will be, they will have a chance to vote for the next, the incoming Speaker of the House, which is, in all likelihood right now is expected to be Nancy Pelosi. Of course, we know that there is a current, debate raging on the left, and, a movement sort of trying to build. It's what's known as the Force the Vote movement. Originally, the idea started from one Jimmy Dore, and who, not a huge fan of personally, don't really like them as personally, but it was a good idea. And so, the base of the idea was a good strategy. The idea that progressives could withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi and force Pelosi by refusing to back her for Speaker of the House. They would have some leverage there. Of course, we have the narrowest margin in the House of Representatives in over 100 years, since I believe it's about 1880 was the last time that there was a margin this narrow in the House. That's the margin between Democrats and Republicans. It's about 4 representatives right now. There are still about 2 elections left to be decided, but as of the moment, it's the gap is only 4 representatives. And the squad alone is 4 people, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley. Of course, there's also members of the Justice Democrats, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal. So, and then you have, in addition to those, you have this incoming influx of progressives, Cori Bush, Jamaal Bowman, Mondaire Jones, who also have some power that they're bringing into Congress. And they're going to get a chance to vote on this. So, while they were on CNN, the Dana Bash asked them about if they were going to come in and be supporting Nancy Pelosi for Speaker of the House, and they responded, and kind of seems caught Dana Bash maybe off guard in some way. But we'll take a listen. And then we'll come back and we'll discuss. The clip has been making rounds on sort of progressive, left-wing, independent media recently, and I have some thoughts on sort of how it's been portrayed on the left, and then, and just some thoughts on the clip in general. So we'll take a look, take a listen, and then we'll come back and discuss.
Something looking ahead at that you're both going to have to vote on, which is the Speaker of the House, Congresswoman-elect Bush. Will you vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker?
What I'm going to do is make sure that the voices of the people of St. Louis are heard and that we have what we need. And so you'll find out then.
That's not a yes.
I'm working with my community. I'm working with my community.
Okay. And Congressman-elect Bowman, will you vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker?
So you will find out when my vote is tallied, and again, organizing with our community to figure out what's best.
I'm just curious, what does that mean? When you said organizing with our community, I mean, what do you want to hear from them real quick in order to make your decision on whether Nancy Pelosi should be the Speaker?
We got to
ahead,
bring
Jamaal.
HR 40 to the floor for a vote. We need reparations for the African American
Okay.
community. We need a federal jobs guarantee. We need Medicare
Thank
for all.
you.
All right. So, as you heard there, that's Cori Bush and Jamaal Bowman. When pressed on it by Dana Bash about, they both said that they essentially would not commit to voting for Nancy Pelosi outright. So they didn't necessarily say that they would certainly be withholding their vote for her. They didn't give specific list of demands. What they said was they intend to work with their communities in order to see what to make sure that they're best representing the people. Of course, this clip aired about 2 days ago now, so this was only less than a week out from the vote. The vote is happening on January 3rd, so we're less than a week out from this vote, and we, there's not much that, the question is like, how much more engaging with their communities can they do between now and then that's going to change really what their decision will be. And if the vote were held today, I would like to know sort of where they would stand on this issue, because I think that what we need is for people to take a hard stance. And I think that the progressives, they need to take a hard line stance in this case, because we're in a very unique situation. We're in the midst of a pandemic that has ravaged the U.S., that has killed over 320,000 Americans. We just this past yesterday. So yesterday we set the record for single day deaths by coronavirus. It was damn near 4,000 people died in a single day. I mean, that far surpasses 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, or it's so like, and look at the responses that we had to those sorts of things, and the legislation that was enacted in the wake of those sorts of tragedies. But when nearly over 3,800 people die in a single day from a virus, apparently it's become almost normalized in a way that we barely make a remark. So I think that this is a very unique moment, because these pandemics like this, you hope that a pandemic doesn't wrought this much damage, but once every 100 years, essentially. The last time that something like this bad happened. Now, these viruses, we live with them, they constantly pop up. They SARS, MERS, they deal some damage, but rising to this level hasn't happened since the 1918 pandemic. That's over 100 years ago. So this is a once in every 100-year pandemic, hopefully. Now I expect with climate change and the globalization of the economy, these, if we don't get a grip on these things and start to, properly prepare for them, then I think that they will happen more frequently, sadly. But this is but a once in every 100-year pandemic and crisis that's happening at the same time, happening in the midst of an economic depression or recession at the very least. And it happens when we know we have more progressives, a larger block of progressives than the margin in the House. So this is a very unique moment of leverage. And I think that if we don't recognize how unique this moment of leverage is for the left, like, if not now, then when? If we don't do everything we can to fight for Medicare for all, a universal health care in the midst of a global pandemic that has killed over 320,000 Americans, when we actually have the power to do so, when we actually have some real leverage with these people that we helped and fought to get elected, then when is the time? What do we need to do? Are we seriously waiting until we have more progressives? Do we have to have a majority of progressives in the Democratic Party? Like, that would take about 109 or 110 progressives in order to have a majority of the Democratic Party? Or what are you saying? Do we need to take over the entire Democratic Party? I pray people aren't saying we need to take over the entire Democratic Party in order to have enough power. But what, we have to take over, we have to be more than half of the Democratic Party in order to exercise our power. Right now, we're going at a rate, we started getting real, these strong progressives in the House starting in about 2018. I mean, you could talk about how Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal got in there a little earlier, but they weren't coming out. They weren't taking as strong of stances until they became backed by Justice Democrats, until they started having that backing. But even that, that you're talking about one or two a year, one or two every couple of years, or at the most we've gotten in recent years was about 4 in a single election cycle. So if we're trying to replace them out 4 people at a time every 2 years, you're talking about needing another 30, 40, 50 years maybe. And that's if we get all of them in there and none of them leave in that time, because now you need people to stay in there for 30 or 40 years and not change, right? Because we all know that people change over time in Congress. So you need people to stay in there for 30 or 40 years without being changed by Congress. Is that our real plan? Like, if that's the plan, then I don't think that we're being realistic and seeing this for what it is. So I've been rambling on a lot. Kwame, do you have any initial thoughts on it? What do you think about the stance that they took? Essentially,
I feel I want to give some amount of credit where credit's due, but like, they had me and then they lost me because it didn't feel substantive. Like it was like, they said things that, yes, I agree. They said stances that I take, but it's like stances I take. It's not policy. It's not something they're pointing specifically to asking for. Like he like Bowman did 3 good points, 3 things that I totally would ask for, but it didn't seem like anything more than just listing off the stances that a good progressive should have. It didn't seem like an actual real ask. It was just like someone asking you, well, what do you want out of life? Well, I want, I want there to be, everyone to be safe. I want the wars to stop. I want, to end hunger. It's like, all right, cool, but like, what do you actually want to do? Like,
that is such a great point. If just to back up what Kwame saying there, he's referring to the fact like Bowman listed out like HR 40, reparations for African American people, Medicare for all, and I don't know if he listed out one other thing in there. But those, okay, yep. And so, but those are really like Medicare for all, reparations for Black people, like we're not the one. Nancy Pelosi alone doesn't have the ability to just do that, right? So you have to say what you want from Nancy Pelosi, because that's the person that you have leverage against, is what Kwame's pointing out there. And I totally agree that like you have to give something more specific than just we want Medicare for all. Well, what about Medicare for all? What actions do you want her to take on Medicare for all? Because she can't simply wave a wand and just pass Medicare for all. So what action do you want her to take? We know some of the things that we can do. We can ask for a House vote for Medicare for all. That's definitely a definitive action that we can ask for. We can also ask for what one of the things David Sirota pointed out, and David Dayen pointed out in the American Prospect. David Sirota pointed out in the Daily Poster and on Jacobin Magazine. Another thing that we could ask for is to ask for a House resolution that would require Joe Biden use his executive authority in order to enact the provision in the Affordable Care Act that says that when there is a public health crisis going on in a region, that the executive branch has the authority to essentially allows those regions to expand their Medicare programs, essentially enacting Medicare for all within that area. And so you could do that because the entire country is under a public health crisis with COVID-19. Essentially, Joe Biden has the authority to enact Medicare for all, with his authority and the power vested in him through the Affordable Care Act. So there is legislation on the books that we could force Joe Biden to use and at least call for a House resolution on that, and demand that Joe Biden have to take that action or whatever to really try to get people healthcare sooner. And so those are definitive things. And there's a movement happening right now. And I wish that if they were being interviewed by a leftist, of course, they would have been asked directly if this was a left wing. I saw Nina Turner getting interviewed on the Hill on Rising on the Hill by Crystal Ball, and Crystal Ball, made sure to ask specifically, like, how do you feel about this specific movement that is happening, to try to force a House vote on Medicare for all. And I wish that Dana Bash would have followed up like that. But of course, it's the typical mainstream corporate right-wing framing of it. And the sort of her shock was just in, oh, I can't believe you wouldn't just,
bend the knee to
exactly.
Like she was so shocked because it was just like so expected, like to the point of like, really, like even the way she asked what they wanted, it was like, all right, so you're holding this hostage, like, what do you like? Whoa, like, what do you mean? No, hold on, like, wow,
yeah.
Like,
So that's your typical like sort of CNN response to that. But what I felt like was that, and they said we're going to work with our community and that you'll find out then. And the thing that bothered me about that is that, to me, that just feels like, and we said, Kwame and I were chatting before we started this, and we said, we were saying like the take I've seen all through, and this, I mentioned this, at the beginning that we would talk about this, but I've seen a bunch of takes on independent left-wing media outlets. And before I watched the clip of the video, I thought that Cori Bush and Jamaal Bowman were going to come out and take a really strong stance on this issue. But because, I mean, the headlines and the things that I was seeing out of progressive media, out of progressive independent media, was like, oh, I mean, folks like the Rational National and Secular Talk, and like, these are people that I trust, left-wing outlets or whatever, on Rising, on the Hill. It was like, oh, Cori Bush and Jamaal Bowman refused to back Nancy Pelosi. I mean, I made my thumbnail like that, and then I didn't have enough time to change my thumbnail over, because we needed to come and do this segment. But before I had gotten to see the clip, I thought that they took a much stronger stance on it, because the outlets that I trusted, just in the way that they were talking about it and their rhetoric online, it sounded like, oh, they must have actually come out in support of the movement. But really what I heard from them was like, oh, you'll find out when I cast my vote, essentially, which is like,
it felt like a plug for the end of an episode on a TV show. It's like, oh, you'll find out next week. Tune in. Like,
exactly.
That wasn't a threat. Like, that wasn't, they weren't really like, it wasn't that strong. They weren't threatening the vote. It's I'll think about it. What
exactly.
are you gonna do? Like,
exactly. And to me, that sounds like it's got no real, they're not really, exactly. There's not a real strategy behind it. They're not actually saying, hey, we're going to go to our colleagues and we're going to demand that our colleagues join us in, refusing and withholding our vote and using our leverage, the little bit of leverage that we have here, to actually try to, to extract something from Pelosi for her, in order to make her Speaker of the House. Right. And so, and this was, I just thought that it was a much weaker than how it was being portrayed in progressive media. And I think that people were just being a little bit more hopeful about this than I would really be. Honestly, it sounds to me like ultimately, they're not backing the movement the way that people have portrayed it to be. They're not saying, hey, we support the force the vote movement, we will withhold our vote. And I think that if that's the case and they're not coming out strongly on it, then I worry that they're just going to be able to be swayed by the AOCs and those sort of folks that are already there, that are going to say, oh, we got to bend the knee, and we're going to do these backdoor deals, and we'll try to, we'll do these backroom deals that the public, they don't understand. So, they can't wrap their heads around this 4D chess that we're playing here. And I saw Kyle Kalinske talk about this, and I thought he made the best point about this. And he said that, like, the problem with that strategy is that that's how Nancy Pelosi, butters her bread. Like, that's how she has gotten to where she's gotten in life, has been through making those backroom deals and doing all this behind the scenes, all that
She's
sort
way
of
better at it than we
that
are.
that's her, that you're trying to play her at her own game there, and it's just not going to work, because that's how she has built and maintained her power, is through those backroom channels. And that's why we saw AOC get crushed in she tried to there was a committee chair, a committee seat up on the energy, what is it, the E&C committee. It's like the energy and commerce, I think. I don't know how I'm spacing on this right now, but I think it's energy and commerce. And it's a huge, very important, very powerful seat. And she lost to this like right winger who hates Pelosi, who doesn't back Pelosi, who doesn't support Pelosi. And she lost to that right winger that doesn't support Pelosi. But, that was like sort of a punishment of the establishment to AOC, because she's not good at playing their games. And it just shows that we do not want to try to play them at their own game there. The power that we have is the power of the people. And the people are on their side right now. And the people are demanding that this is it. It's like, we want to see some push, some progress made on Medicare for all. And this is the only leverage that we see in sight. You tell me what's the next moment that we're waiting on? What does it look like for people that, and nobody can define for me that's against it. They just can't define what it looks like, what they want to see for us to get there.
I was hopeful when it all started, when I first heard about all this, based on what I had heard, but I'm less hopeful now, because what they actually said when they say they're going to go back to their communities, they're going to go back to their people. Like, I'd like to believe that it's progressives, but I don't know if it's force the vote people. And those are the people I need them to go have the conversations with right now, as far as this Nancy Pelosi situation and whether they are going to vote for it. Those are the people that I need them to be talking to right now. And I don't, as weak as that came out, I don't think that they are.
Yeah. And also, I think that it's like, I would want them to be speaking to those people. And I would also want them to kind of have the instinct themselves, because the reason that you elect a politician is that you're saying, listen, I want somebody that I trust, that your core values are the same as my core values, and that you have the fight in you. Like, that's what people want to see. And when they see somebody like that, they say, okay, I want that person, because I'm going to trust that person now, because a working person, like everyday working people, they don't have the time and the energy to put in to try to understand these convoluted rules of the House and Congress. Like, I, as somebody that is deeply engaged in politics, I have to look these rules up and try to, and read up and research and try to figure out, like, they're so convoluted that even people that follow politics, many people, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, did not understand. He did not know that, and I didn't know this until it got brought up through this, that it's not that the person with the most votes for Speaker of the House wins Speaker of the House. You have to get a majority. So there is no chance, unless some chunk of Democrats vote for a Republican for Speaker of the House, there is no chance that a Republican can become Speaker of the House with a democratically controlled, a Democratic majority in the House. So even if Nancy Pelosi doesn't get enough votes, it doesn't just go to it doesn't go to the next person with the next most votes or anything like that, or with more votes or anything like that. The person has to get over 218. So you have to get a majority. So and if they don't, it simply goes to another vote, and everybody can just rerun, and more people could join in and run and try to run for speaker. And until you get a consensus, until you get a majority consensus on it, nobody becomes Speaker of the House. So there's no risk to Democrats to do this, in the sense, like, it's not like, oh, if we don't vote for Nancy Pelosi, that a Republican is going to become Speaker of the House. And oh no, I thought that initially going into this. Cenk Uygur, who has been following politics for like 20 freaking years, he didn't even understand this. So how can we expect everyday working class people to understand this. What you expect is for you are entrusting this politician to go out there and for them to go figure out those damn rules and figure out the strategy that's necessary to push forward the things that you say that you support. And if those politicians support, if they really do support Medicare for all and want to see Medicare for all happen the fastest, then this is the only, this is the move right now. This is the only move that we can make, really, to use some leverage, to use the power that we have to actually force, to push it forward. Now, I say what the Jimmy Dore strategy does not go far enough. And I've maintained that from the absolute outset of this, that the Jimmy Dore strategy for just a floor vote on Medicare for all is not enough. And we should ask for more. We should demand that Nancy Pelosi not just do the floor vote for Medicare for all, but that she, in addition to that she also, call for the, ensure that there will be a House resolution, a vote for a House resolution in order to demand that Joe Biden use his executive authority to use the provision in the ACA to expand Medicare in all the states and actually give more people health care in the short term, in the interim, so that we don't have to wait. Because with the forcing the floor vote for Medicare for all, just to be clear for folks, because we try to fit, it seems like you got to fit all this information into every time you do one of these videos, or the Jimmy Dore stands come out of the woodwork and start telling you that you don't support it enough and blah, 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 and all this sort of stuff. That the floor vote, the likelihood of it passing into legislation, becoming legislation, and becoming a Medicare for all legislation is almost zero. It's pretty much essentially zero. It would have to pass through a likely, either a majority Republican Senate, which honestly the Senate is up in the Georgia Senate runoffs are up in the air at this point because of Mitch McConnell and what we covered on yesterday's segment about the him not passing him blocking the $2,000 stimulus checks. I think that throws the Georgia Senate runoffs up in the air. But even with a Democratic majority in the Senate, there are a lot of corporate Democrats in the Senate. Those are almost all millionaire Democrats that are backed by big pharma and health insurance industry and medical device industries. And those people are, they're already bought, and they've already been bought by those, those moneyed interests, those corporate interests or whatever. And they are very unlikely to pass through even a democratically controlled Senate. And then it would have to pass through a White House where either Donald Trump could veto it or Joe Biden, who is on record saying that if a Medicare for all bill comes to his desk, he will veto it. Okay, so the likelihood of Medicare for all passing through that channel is slim to none. What the value of a Medicare for all floor vote is that it gets people on the record in a very meaningful way. It gets them on the record saying whether or not do you actually support universal health care in the middle of a pandemic. And there is a lot of political value to having a politician on the record denying their constituents health care in the middle of a pandemic, okay, where you want everybody to have health care. You want everybody to be covered, because in order to get, to finally overcome this virus, we're going to need everybody to get, you need, Dr. Anthony Fauci is on record now saying it could take up to 90% vaccination in order to get to herd immunity. So we might need to get 90% of people vaccinated, up to 90%, 80 to 90% of people vaccinated in order to get herd immunity for COVID-19. So you need 80 to 90% of people to have the health care and the access to that they need. And also you want them to make sure that they're going to the doctor if they're getting symptomatic. You want to make sure that those people are like going to the doctor and getting the checkups that they need, because that's the only way that, people are going to, catch the disease early or the virus early and snuff it out. So, I think that, there is this legislation. The value of it is really it's a bit more of a long game with the forcing the Medicare for all floor vote, and we can recognize that. But it is the only game that we have to play right now. It's the only leverage we have in sight, and we don't know what's going to happen in 2-4 years. Honestly, I think that there's a very real chance that Democrats lose control of the House in 2022 because nothing's going to get done. People are going to get ravaged through this pandemic. The working class is struggling. We're going to throw $600 at people after throwing $1,200 at them 9 months ago while their, evictions are coming up, rents coming due. People can't pay for their housing, for food. What do you think? We are on the precipice of something catastrophic in this country. And who do you think they're going to blame? They're going to blame the party in power, and it's going to be the Democratic Party in power. So they're going to look and they're going to say, oh, Joe Biden's been in power for 2 years. Nothing got done. We got no more health care. We got no health care. No progress is being made. People are going to get apathetic, and you're asking a lot of the working class to go out there and to continue to try to vote when they're just trying to make ends meet and trying to survive a pandemic. It's a really tough ask to ask them to keep on going out and financially supporting these politicians. When you back these politicians, you give them your money, you give them your time and support, and then they turn around and they work against you, or they don't listen to you. Then how much more can you ask of people? So I do think that this is an important moment to get people to continue to invigorate the left and to make sure that people understand that we are getting something for our work, and to show people that we are getting, we do have power on the left, and to actually use the power that we've been fighting for years now. I mean, it's been 4 years we've been fighting since Trump got elected. We started that fight 4 years ago, at least, with all these electoral moves. And what are we talking about? In 4 years, we still haven't made one power play. In 4 years, not a single power play. And you're saying, wait another at least 2 years where we might lose seats in 2 years and then not even have a democratically controlled House. So what the hell is our power then when we're in a Republican controlled House? And let's be real, that if history holds true, look at what happened to Obama in the midterm elections after Obama got elected. He got what he called shellacked. They got their asses handed to them. So it can absolutely, if history holds up, Republicans will take control of the House in 2022. And from there, and then in 2024, imagine what's going to happen, because you're going to have 2 more years of Biden where nothing gets done because you got a potentially Republican Senate, but possibly a Republican House now. And nothing's going to get done. You just have a reversal of roles, and we'll just keep on handing power back and forth while nothing changes. I just think that we have to use our power right now. So I'll if you have any thoughts there, I'm gonna flip to some comments. Corey Saylor was in the chat. What's up, Corey? Good to see you. Corey says they gave politician-y answers. That was Washington speak for I'll vote for Nancy if I get something for it. It was a really that was uninspiring, their answers, to be honest. It was very politician-y, and I used that, I believe, exact word in when we were sort of pre-gaming about this. Kwame and I think we used that exact word, that it was just such a politician-y answer of not being direct about it, right? And taking a strong stance and just be direct about it and say, I won't support it and I'll withhold my vote. And these are the demands. And you should there is an existing movement. If you are listening to the people, then listen to those people. It's a clear debate ravaging on here, and there's no way they're not aware of that. And so we're beyond the point of talking about what other concessions we can extract from them, because there is only, at the point that they were taking this interview, it was 6 days left. At this point, it's 4 days left. We got 4 days until this vote. You either back it or you don't, and you need to not just back it on the day. I need you to do it. They got to make it happen on that day, and they need to be what they call whipping votes. And right now they should be talking to Mondaire Jones and talking to other progressives and saying, hey, let's use our power to try to push our colleagues, other progressives, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, to come out and back this, because all we need is that we need essentially 6 progressives, can do it comfortably. I believe even 5 can do it. So all we need is 5 of them to just say, we will withhold our vote unless you agree to hold the floor vote for Medicare for all. We will not vote for Nancy Pelosi for speaker, and that could get it done. And so I would have loved to see them take harder stances on it. And I was kind of disappointed that they didn't. Corey also says, I prefer they just come out and say that, but I think they get to force the vote message. And yeah, so I know that they've heard that force the vote message. I hope that I know that I believe that that's at least what gave them the courage to even do what they did here. But is the fact that they knew that there was this sort of, movement of sorts happening. Sadly, I don't think that it's much of a movement at all. And I think that, we could get into that, but I think that the way that Jimmy Dore has approached this has played a role in weakening and slowing down the movement. And I'm not even going to get into it right now. I will deal with the Jimmy Dore shit after January 3rd. Like on January 4th, I'm going to get into it and I'm going to come back around and I will go back into it, but I will not, I'm going to take this time, even though I don't like the dude, I believe in the actual underlying cause. So I don't care who else supports it. It's a good idea. It's a good strategy. And I will back it because I believe in the causes and I believe in the movement. I think that we have to put policy above personality. And in this case, I'll do it even at, even if it hurts my soul to do so. I know that if it's something that will be better off for the majority of people, then that's what I want to fight for. So, Cori also says, one glimmer of hope there. Ossoff said he was against Medicare for all. His numbers immediately took a hit, and now you see him tweeting healthcare is a human right. Points for hashtag force the vote. Yeah, sadly, Ossoff, we know what he is, and like he's backed by, he takes money from big pharma, and he is, this healthcare is a human right. BS is like, it's not a human right. Okay, so like we can say that stuff, but that's one of the weakest slogans. It's like, do you support? There is existing legislation on the books. Do you support that existing legislation? Because we don't have to play the like the pandering and the I forget what you call it. For some reason, just spacing on the word, but it's there's no substance behind it, is what it is, and it's just like platitudes. Platitudes is what it is. Sorry, so it's just platitudes, empty platitudes. Healthcare is a human right. Sure, then do you support legislation? Because you are a person that is vying for power. I've seen Raphael Warnock say the same thing. Healthcare is a human right. He wants to go and fight to prove that healthcare is a human right. Listen, you support Medicare for all or you don't, because that's the only way that we actually, give people healthcare as a quote unquote human right. But we all know, rights aren't supposed to be things that can just be taken away by people. So, it's not currently a right, and I don't think that these people actually support that kind of legislation. And this is why having them vote on it is so meaningful, because you get them on the record in a way that you can't with like co-sponsorship, like what AOC was talking about. Like, oh, well, you got the co-sponsors of the bill. Well, guess what? One of the co-sponsors of the Medicare for All bill was the politician that Cori Bush just beat out. And he was a corporatist politician that we know didn't truly support Medicare for All. So you can co-sponsor these bills without truly supporting these things and actually fighting for and there's a big difference between, saying you support something and fighting for it, right? Like the people that are going to fight for it, they can do a whole lot more if they're actually pushing for it versus like just saying that you support it, right? Cori says, my point is he sees the public support it has and he feels the need to thread the line. And that is a great point. And Cori, I'm sorry that I didn't point that out, because that is a great point that you're making. And I totally agree with that. That is a good sign when we see that he tried to waffle on something and he lost support when he waffled on Medicare for All. The same thing happened to Elizabeth Warren during the primaries, and the same thing happened to Kamala Harris during the primaries. They came out, they acted like they supported Medicare for All. They flip-flopped on it, and as soon as they flip-flopped, their support tanked. Like Elizabeth Warren, it was so dramatic when it happened to Elizabeth Warren. She came out, she put out her really weak Medicare for All plan that was actually a public option in disguise, that said, we're going to do a public option, and then we're going to hold a vote. We'll pass legislation for a public option. And then 2 years after that, then we'll come back and we'll try to have another vote for Medicare for All, which is like, good luck. Like that is not supporting Medicare for all. If you support Medicare for all, you start with legislation. You pass legislation. You know how hard it is to pass legislation like that? Like, to think that you could do it every 2 years. Look how long it's been since the ACA passed, and we haven't been able to pass any other, legislation on top of that or anything else besides that since, what is it, like 2012, was it? So the idea that you can just come back 2 years from then and pass another massive piece of legislation like that, the people saw right through it and her support tanked. And so Cori's absolutely right. I think that when that happens, that's a really promising sign, because it means, hey, if you don't support this thing, you aren't going to get, your poll numbers are going to say you're not going to win elections, and that scares politicians. So at the very least, they have to nominally support it. And I do think that there is power behind that. I just think that it doesn't go far enough necessarily. I still think that we need to be fighting harder to get politicians elected. If we're going to be fighting electorally, it's got to be for people that actually support the policy, because you can see already, even people that support the policy don't go along with the fight sometimes with us, right? Like AOC actually truly supports Medicare for all. Cori Bush and Jamaal Bowman, all these people genuinely support Medicare for all. They truly believe in it. They simply don't have the same strategy worked out that we have worked out here. And there is a difference there than, say, a John Ossoff or somebody even worse than that, that's even hostile to it. So great points, Cori. And I do agree with you on that, and that he does see he feels that public pressure, and that is important, that it at least says that they recognize that it's a popular policy, and they understand that it's popular policy. And so it's even a little bit more nefarious, we should see it as, that they go against it, and they don't outright fight for it, because they clearly know that it's actually popular. But they're just so in the pocket of like these health insurance industries and big pharma that they're only willing to support it in name only, essentially.
That's why I think the best shot we have would be, like you said, that resolution. Because even if they could do it for a short term, it's one of those things that's like it's water, it's what's the expression? It's in lotion in a bottle, oil in a bottle, toothpaste in a tube. Once it's out, you can't put it back in.
Yeah,
you can't. Like, once people see what it's like, who've never had that option before.
Yeah.
Especially because that's, I think, which is why they're trying to just ignore it or are so hostile against it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that, that whole in the vein of like, toothpaste once it's out of the tube kind of thing. It's like, I think the same thing about them using their leverage and winning something. Like, once you do that, there's no taking that back either. People are going to see, like, holy shit, like, we have power. The people that we got elected, they did something, and they actually moved the needle on this thing, and they fought, they stood up on a principled stance, and they actually won something. And I think that invigorates people in a real way, in a substantive way. And so, but even more so, I agree with you on the point of actually getting people the healthcare. Once they feel that, then it's just like the pre-existing conditions. People aren't going back on that, or like people don't want to go back on the provision of Obamacare where it says like you can stay on your parents' healthcare plan until you're 26 years old. It used to be like 18 and you were kicked off, or 21 or something, and you got kicked off. And now it's like 26, and people don't like that. They fight for that because they got a taste of that. And because everybody has, pretty much everybody is 20, less than 26 at one point. We all, if you're alive, you were under 26 at one point. And then, or the pre-existing conditions, because, if you didn't have a pre-existing condition yourself, you knew somebody with a pre-existing condition, and the things that they would use as pre-existing conditions is like, oh, you had like, a pimple when you were like 10 years old. That's a pre-existing condition for like cancer. And sorry, we're not going to cover you because we found, like some major cancer procedure that you have to do now. And they found all kinds of loopholes, and that was real types of shit that they did to people. And people knew that was gross, and they got a little taste of that kind of policy that was, universal, applied to everybody. And people are, you see Republicans coming out and saying, don't worry, we're not going to take away pre-existing conditions. Like we support pre-existing, supporting, no pre-existing condition clauses and stuff. So once people get a taste of it, just like if we ever got people universal healthcare, like look at any country that has had universal healthcare. You find me a country that has exactly. Find me a single country where they had universal healthcare and then switch back to a system of non-universal healthcare. It just does not exist. Has never happened. Will likely never happen. Right. So it would take something catastrophic for that to happen. So people don't go back. Once you give people a taste of something like that, they don't go back. So all right. Corey Saylor also says that Bob Barker is the shit. I'd have to see why. I feel like I have mixed feelings on Bob Barker over the years, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it maybe just I'm hating on him. Maybe that Happy Gilmore in his appearance on there, he was kind of was Bob Barker kind of a dick in Happy Gilmore? I don't remember.
I can't remember, but that sounds right. That sounds like Happy Gilmore.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll have to see what Bob Barker is up to, Corey, that you're saying that. We'll check that out. I don't know if did Bob Barker come out in support of Force the Vote? I'll do a quick search here to see. Nope, I don't see. Oh gosh.
Oh no.
You do Bob Barker Force the Vote, and what comes up is like, former Price is Right model sued Bob Barker for forcing her to have sex. Yeah, sorry, Bob Barker, but maybe we don't like Bob Barker so much. Maybe my instinct was correct. Okay. Corey meant Bob Ross. Okay. Yes. Okay. Because Kwame's wearing a Bob Ross shirt for anyone listening in and not watching. Kwame is wearing a Bob Ross shirt, and yeah, I do. We all love Bob Ross. That is hilarious.
Yes. That was a great moment. If we can clip that separately and play that at some point next year for a clip of the year, right there. Thank you for that one. That was amazing.
Thank you for that, Corey. Thank you.
We all had a moment.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think, I believe I've said all that I really want to say on this. I know we'll get I'll see if the Jimmy Dore folks, what they have to say in the comments, because, usually without fail, they'll come in here and they'll misinterpret something that I said, but we'll see if that makes them happy, keeps them happy there. I do support forcing a vote on the Medicare for All. I think that it's a way that it's the little bit of leverage that we have, and we have to use it while we have it. There's not going to be another pandemic like this. Get people on the record denying their constituents healthcare in the middle of a pandemic, and we can absolutely run ads against them in the 2022 and 2024 elections and try to beat out some more of these centrist Democrats that don't support the things that are just so popular, these really popular policies. So thank you, everyone. I've waited so long to say it, but please, if you haven't done so already, please hit the like button below, subscribe to the channel, share this out. We do appreciate that. And if you can afford to do so, and only if you can afford to do so, please do us a favor, support the show on Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/radical democracy. You can also find us on Patreon and support us there for as low as $1 a month. Patreon.com/radical democracy. Links are in the description box below. You can also find Kwame and throw him a few dollars in support on Patreon and Ko-fi, I believe, as well now. Or are you on Ko-fi yet? Focus? No. Okay. So Patreon only for now. Patreon.com/RaceFistMedia. Check them out. Throw them some support. Support independent Black Left media, please. And we will see you again soon. All right, folks. You got any parting thoughts before we go?
I think you said everything that needs to be said, honestly.
All right. We'll catch you. Thanks for joining us today, Kwame, by the way. Appreciate that. And we will
appreciate y'all.
Love it.